Good morning. Welcome back. Today's Tuesday, and we're going to go over your homework assignments that are remaining in Chapter 24 so that you guys are ready to take your test tomorrow. So the first assignment is Chapter 24, Section 2B, 763 to 764. It's all about minority rights. We're going to find out that the Ku Klux Klan started to grow during the 1920s as a direct result of great migration of African Americans to the North for employment during World War I. We also are going to see that there are lots of different arguments about how African Americans should respond to the prejudice and also discrimination they're experiencing, not only in the South with the Jim Crow laws and segregation, but also in the North. And so we have Marcus Garvey, who is going to support Black nationalism, which is going to encourage African Americans to establish their own economic independence with business and in their own communities. We also have creations of different leagues that are going to assist minorities on trying to gain rights and citizenship here in the United States. So the first one is the League of United Latin American Citizens. And when I did take a look at your homework, some of you guys had explained it and some of you guys just mentioned the league, but you did need to actually include as well what the league did and what it was trying to achieve. So it worked at unfair treatment like segregation in schools and voting restrictions. The second one was the Indian Citizenship Act, which is going to grant citizenship to all Native Americans. All right, next we're going to go over your last homework assignment, which was actually back in Chapter 24, Section 3, pages 765 to 769. And this one is all about this new mass culture that ends up developing at the end after World War I. So the first one is, again, new culture, radio, movies. Everyone's going, everyone's listening to the same thing so that people know the same slang, same songs, and have this common bond. They are going to have a creation of special movie stars as a result of this common bond. So Mary Pickford is America's sweetheart. She actually was going to be one of the highest paid actors during the time period and also is one of the founding members of the United Artists Film Company. Next you have George Herman Babe Ruth, who's going to be a baseball player for the Yankees and shatters the home run record. We've got two baseball players that were here in Pittsburgh, Satchel Paige and also Josh Gibson. They're going to be Negro Baseball League, which is going to be considered some of the best players in the world. Gertrude Elderly is going to be the first woman to swim across the English Channel. She actually is going to beat the men's record by 2 whole hours. Charles Lindbergh is the first nonstop transatlantic flight. And then Amelia Earhart is the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. The next portion of the homework is actually going to deal with music. So our new jazz age is going to be developed, and it's going to be a combination of European harmonies and African American rhythms. Louis Armstrong is going to be this trumpet player who starts to use solos. Edward Duke Ellington is going to be conductor and composer of the big band sound. The Harlem Renaissance is a period of African American artistic achievement during the Great Migration. And again, all of these things are happening because you do have African Americans coming north to work in factories. In terms of accomplishments of a series of writers, Langston Hughes is going to write poems, plays, and novels about African American life that's incorporated slang and also jazz rhythms. Clyde McKay is going to be our poet and activist who spoke out against racial discrimination and called for African Americans to stand up against lynching and other violence. Our last artist is going to be Zora Hurston, who's going to write Their Eyes, which is going to be reflecting about African American life. We also have another group of writers who are known as the Lost Generation. They're going to criticize American society, and they are going to be a little disillusioned about the events of World War I. A lot of them are going to move to Paris and become expatriates, and they are going to be people who leave their country and home to live elsewhere. We also have a whole bunch of writers that fall into this category. We have Ernest Hemingway, who wrote about expatriates in The Sun Also Rises. F. Scott Fitzgerald, who wrote The Great Gatsby, and that's going to focus on the loss of morality behind the fun and free-spirited jazz age. St. Clair Lewis, the first American to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature. You also have Edward Hopper, who's going to paint images of loneliness of modern urban life, and Georgia O'Keeffe, who painted flowers of the Southwest. So the next one actually is a repeat of what we've already done. We took a look at the earlier version of African American experience, but these are just people who are going to challenge the way that we view the world and try to push for equality, and they're going to do it in a couple different ways. So we have Booker T. Washington. He was born a slave, eventually becomes an educator, and his strategy is that you should not fight against discrimination directly, and that you should improve your educational qualities and your economic abilities, and then you will eventually reach just at the end of discrimination discrimination that way. You have Ida B. Wells, who's going to write articles about unequal education for African American children. She's going to write about lynchings as well. And then you also have W.E.B. Du Bois. He's going to be born in Massachusetts, going to graduate from Harvard, and he's going to protest against the unjust treatment of African Americans and demand equal rights. He's also going to be one of the co-founders of the NAACP, which again is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. All right, again, the last couple ones are kind of a repeat of what we've already talked about, but we did have the grandfather clauses that were put in place. So you could not vote unless your grandfather had the right to vote, and that was before 1867. And as you know, most African Americans do not have the right to vote before then, and also their grandfathers were slaves, so they could not vote. The progressive movement does not include minorities because the aim was actually to encourage ethnicities to develop the aim was to encourage ethnic groups to adopt European societies, European. All right, let's try that last part again. I've got all tongue-tied. So the end of the progressive movement does not include minorities because people are trying to encourage the different ethnic groups to try to adopt more European values and follow European society. So that's the end of your homework. So you should have everything correct for your homework packet to study for your test. You can continue on to start to make your online review games and study for your test. If you are done with that and you want to work ahead, you can also get the next chapter, which is chapter 25, dealing with the Great Depression. You can start working on the next section of that homework. The first section is actually going to be due on Thursday. All right, and I will see you guys tomorrow ready to take your test.